filled with narrow minds and hate.
Hello. Thank you so much for tuning in to A Spoonful of Comfort. I am Claudrine Jackson, and I'm reminding you and me that we can all share comfort with people. With the political environment and things that are going on in the country, there's so much negativity out there in the world that people need comforting. And a spoonful of comfort is the very minimum amount of comfort you can give. We all have a spoonful of comfort. So remember, you don't just have to look for comfort, you can give comfort. Even my son, who has autism, likes to give comfort. When you say, PJ, I need a hug, he'll come to you and give you a big hug. So we all are capable of giving some comfort. Uh, I'm the founder of the Purvis Jackson Jr. Autism Foundation. We help children with handicaps, lower income children with handicaps, because the wealthy parents of children with handicaps, they can afford to do things that lower income parents can't do. So the Purvis Jackson Foundation helps lower income children with autism and other disabilities. And I want to say thank you to some of our donors, because raising money to help raising money for any foundation turned out to be a lot harder than I thought it was. So I want to say thank you to some of our donors. We got a surprise donation from JP Morgan Chase Bank from the employees there. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Norma Fambro gave an event and raised money for the Purvis Foundation. Thank you, Norma. Susan Keskinney, one of our board members, made a donation. Thank you, Susan. We have Wesley Gullick, who gives a golf outing every year to raise money for the Purvis Foundation. And Cleo Forrest, who works at the Locker Room Lounge in Detroit. The Locker Room has been giving events to raise money for autism for many years. My son is 42. They've been raising money for autism for about 30 years. So I really appreciate that. I want to issue an invitation to the people who are running for the 13th Congressional District seat for U.S. Congress. I'm offering you an invitation to come on my show and give us your point of view and your plans. I would love to hear from you. You can reach me at Jackson Claudrine, CLAUDREEN, at sbcglobal.net. Jackson Claudrine at sbcglobal.net. One of the things that the Purvis Foundation is going to do is we want to do something for parents of children with handicap for Mother's Day. Now, generally, I send people to the website for a grant from the Purvis Foundation. But if you're the parent of a child with a handicap in the city of Detroit, we want to do something for you for Mother's Day. So if you will write a letter to me, doesn't have to be a big letter, telling me a little something about you, a little something about your child, a little something about what you would like for the Purvis Foundation to do for you for Mother's Day, you can write to the Purvis Foundation, Box 04422, Detroit 48204, Michigan. That's Purvis Jackson Foundation, Post Office Box 04422, Detroit, Michigan 48204. And we would like to do something for you for Mother's Day, which is next month. May is Mother's Day. And if anyone needs a little uplift for Mother's Day, any day, it's the parent of children with a handicap. So the Purvis Foundation would like to do something for you. So contact me. Also, I want to mention the Mother's Day brunch. I am a deacon at New Mount Vernon Missionary Baptist Church in Ferndale, Michigan, and we are having a Mother's Day brunch. It's going to be the Saturday before Mother's Day, May the 12th, from 11 to 2. And if any parents of children with handicaps want to attend the brunch, you can also let me know about that when you send the letter to me about your child. I usually have people go to the internet to make a request for assistance, but this is something that we'd like to do this month and next month because parents of children with handicaps, I can guarantee you they need help. And wealthy parents can afford to do the things that we do. We send children to camp, we pay for therapies, we pay for medication. But for mothers, for Mother's Day, we want to either uh, pay for a sitter for you so you can get out for an evening, and we'll pay for dinner for you. We'll if you want to buy your child an outfit or you want to buy yourself an outfit, contact me at the post office box because we do want to do something for you. And I'm thankful to all the people who keep the foundation going so that we're able to do these things. When my son first came along, I was so depressed because he was born in 1975. And in 1975, prior to 1975, people with autism had been institutionalized. So originally, I was trying to find an institution for him. I did not know that in 1975, the federal government said you have to break down the big institutions, which after I did find out about the big institutions, I found out that was a good idea to break them down. But in the beginning, I felt so alone because in 75, you never heard of autism. Prior to that, they'd been in institutions. Now, they weren't institutionalized anymore, but nobody was telling me how to take care of this child. So I felt like I'm all alone. In the Bible, in the book of John, he mentions crying in the wilderness. That's how I felt. I was a voice crying in the wilderness and feeling so alone and so isolated and not knowing what to do about this child. Um, when they talk on the radio about having church services for the sick and the shut in and making sure that they get the gospel, well, with the sick and the shut in, there is the caregiver, whoever is the caregiver for that person. So I was the caregiver for my son. And during the early years, his behavior was so difficult and so challenging that I was afraid to leave him with anyone else. So one Sunday, I'm listening to the radio, I'm feeling sorry for myself, I'm stranded in the wilderness. Um, Councilman Peoples came on. He was a pastor, he had a church here, and he was also a member of the Detroit City Council. So I was listening to his Sunday morning show, and he said that um, when you feel like you're in the wilderness, my ears perked up because I felt like I was in the wilderness. He said, remember that Jesus is in the wilderness with you. And that's what I needed to hear when I needed to hear it. Now, uh, there's a scripture also, Isaiah 43:19, where the Lord says, behold, I do a new thing. Now it springs forth. Shall ye not know it? I will even make a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert. And I thought, oh my goodness, there can be a way in the wilderness. So during that time, as I was coming out of my big depression about my son, I wrote a poem called He Who Holds the Future, which was my faith in the future. He who holds the future. When storms are raging round me and I'm drowning in quicksand and unhappy things are happening, things that I don't understand, when I don't know what else to do, I'll just do what I can because He who holds the future, He also holds my hand. I'll know that God is with me every step of the way. If He brings me to it, He'll bring me through it. So in His care, I will stay. And I will face my future according to His plan because He who holds the future, He also holds my hand. And that was something that I wrote as I was coming out of my depression about autism. It's time for me to take a short break. Please stick and stay with me, and I will be back in a minute. Thank you so much.
When I was 17, I ran away from home and from everything I had ever known.
Thank you so much for sticking with me for a spoonful of comfort. I am blessed by R.J. Watkins and Henry Tyler to be able to have a voice in the community. And I am so thankful to them for allowing me the opportunity to express myself. Now, this is the month of April. April is Autism Month, and it's National Autism Month. Now, I know that hearing about people with autism and other disabilities is not anyone's favorite subject. I realize that. But as the parent of a child who cannot talk, and as a parent of someone who has seen many other people in his condition, if I don't talk about autism during Autism Month, who will? So allow me to tell you my autism story. Uh, I mentioned that my son, PJ, was born in 1975. Well, my husband, Purvis Jackson, the bass singer of the Spinners, uh, the Spinners had just started having hit records. They had their first hit record in November of 1972, their first million seller. So now 73 and 74 were wonderful years. I was traveling and shopping and buying all the things that I'd been wanting for years for the house, and life was just wonderful. And uh, this child came along in 1975 who knew nothing about any of this. So he truly clipped my wings. I said I was traveling among the beautiful people, and life was a joy every day. And then along comes this child that clips my wings. He had extremely difficult behaviors. He would scream all day and sometimes all night, so I wasn't getting any sleep at night. He was very disruptive. He was very hard to handle. In fact, we would go out in public and people would say, "You need to keep that child at home," or "Why do you even bring him out of the house?" So for one while, I did start keeping him at home, and didn't bring him out of the house, but I was getting more and more depressed about it. But I joined the Michigan Society for Autistic Citizens. It was called MSAC. It's now the Autism Society of Michigan. I became a board member of the Michigan Society for Autistic Citizens, Autism Society of Michigan now. And I thought that they had the answer for me as to what to do about autism. Well, I found out it was parents just like me. We were trying to find out what to do about autism because they said it had no cure and nobody knew what caused autism. So one of the things that the Autism Society of Michigan did is they sent groups of parents and people that worked with autism. They sent us in groups of 5 during this particular month, and we went to Nebraska, to Omaha, Nebraska, to study with Dr. John McGee. at the University of Nebraska Psychiatric Hospital about dealing with people with the kind of behaviors that my son had. Because, like I said, up until 75, they were put in institutions. Um, and in the institutions, they were heavily sedated with psychiatric drugs, or they were restrained, or both. Well, Dr. John McGee had another technique where you didn't restrain them, you didn't heavily drug them, and he called this technique gentle teaching. And Dr. McGee helped me more than he will ever know. We worked with some of the patients at the Nebraska Psychiatric Hospital, and he gave us strategies for dealing with difficult behavior. And one of them was to be gentle with them. They needed to know what gentle was. Well, I was always in a panic, so it never crossed my mind that I wasn't being gentle enough. But after my son came along, then I found another group of beautiful people. I found the people that were working with children like my son and parents of other children like my son. And you talk about the beautiful people, these were the beautiful people. Now, Dr. John McGee gave us strategies for working with our children. He said for us to decide ahead of time what we were going to do if there was a difficult situation. He called it define your posture. What kind of person are you going to be to this uh, child, this difficult person? So I had to think about the kind of caregiver I wanted to be. And he named 4 different kinds of caregivers. But I decided that I wanted to be the one that was kind and gentle. And he had us work with some of the patients there so we could learn the strategies for being kind and gentle. So I decided that when I came back home from University of Nebraska, I was going to put some of their techniques to work. So some of the things that used to upset me about my son is he used to lay on the floor and he'd hit his head on the floor and he'd hit his hands on the floor and he would scream. And he did this on a regular basis. Well, I did not know what to do about it. So one day, after I got back from studying with Dr. John McGee, he's laying on the floor and he's hitting his head on the floor. He's hitting his hands on the floor. And I realized I was leaning against the wall, and I was hitting my hands on the wall, and I was saying, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do, which is what I had always said. But now I thought about what John McGee said. And I decided that what I would do is, instead of staying there being upset about him, I would walk out of the room and go to another room. Well, lo and behold, once I walked out of the room, my son got up and walked out of the room. And I did not realize that when he was having a tantrum, that I was kind of feeding into it because I would get so flustered and I don't know what to do and so upset. And just learning that he knew where I was and what I was doing, because I always thought he was oblivious to me when he was having a tantrum. The doctors called it an episode. Well, I always thought he was oblivious to me, but he wasn't, because when I got up and walked out of the room, so did he. Um, then he had something that he used to do all the time, where he flapped his hands, flap, 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 and he gee, 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 and I did not like to see that. So whenever he was doing something like that, I would get his hands and hold them at his side. Then I read a book called Sunrise, and the author mentioned uh, mirroring, where we mirrored their behavior. Whatever behavior they were doing, we did it also. So when PJ would be flapping and yee, 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 then I started doing it. And he did not like to see me doing it any more than I like to see him. So he came and grabbed my hands and held them down at my side. And, bumbling and stumbling, I found out that he was more in tune to what was going on than I would have thought. I thought that when he was having an episode that he didn't realize what was going on around him. So I learned that before an episode, if I knew he was about to have a tantrum, to take him to time out. Say, okay, PJ, you need a rest. Well, as he got older and he was too big for me to take the time out, I said, well, I will go to timeout. Timeout was usually in his room. So I went into his room for timeout. And then he followed me into his room. So I came out. So he stayed in the room. And I found out that the timeout situation was something that he really wanted. And still today, if I say, you can go to your room and take a rest when he's getting upset, he does that. So autism has been my great challenge, my great education. I know, like I said, I know that autism is not what people want to hear about. But today, that month of April is Autism Month. So if I don't talk about autism, who will? I want to share a couple of scriptures with you that help me renew myself, the renewal scriptures. Romans 12:2. Be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. Your mind has the infinite capacity to renew itself. I discovered that. I didn't believe it then. I thought I was worn out and weary. Also, the 23rd Psalm, he restores my soul. He restores my soul. Isaiah 40:31. They that wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up on wings like an eagle. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. And I remember reading that and wondering, can this be true? Can you renew your strength? Yes, God can renew your mind. He can renew your strength. He can restore your soul. It can happen. If you believe, if you have faith as the grain of a mustard seed and ask God to restore you, he will. I want to end with a poem called Heaven's Very Special Child. Now, we don't know who wrote it, and it's not one that I wrote. I like reading my poetry also. This poem is from, we don't know where it came from. The writer is anonymous. But I want to share this with parents of children with handicaps because it was very helpful to me. Heaven's Very Special Child. A meeting was held quite far from earth. It's time again for another birth, said the angels to the Lord above. This special child will need much love. His progress may seem very slow, accomplishments he may not show, and he'll require some extra care from the folks he meets down there. He may not run, laugh, or play. His thoughts may seem quite far away. In every way, he won't adapt, and many will say that he's handicapped. So let's be careful where he's sent. We want his life to be content. Please, Lord, find the parents who will do a special job for you. They may not realize right away the leading role that they're asked to play. But with this child sent from above comes stronger faith and richer love. And soon they'll know the privilege given in caring for this gift from heaven. Their precious charge, so meek and mild, is heaven's very special child. That poem helped me greatly. I hope it helped any of you parents who are listening. It's time for me to sign off. Remember to tune in on Tuesdays at 1:30 on WHPR TV 33 for a spoonful of comfort. And remember that you can give comfort as well as get comfort. And until next week, May the power of God protect you. May the presence of God comfort you. And may the love of God enfold you. This is Claudrine Jackson sharing a spoonful of comfort. Until next week, thank you.
When I was 17, I ran away from home and from everything I had ever known.
I was sick and tired, living in a town filled with narrow minds and hate.
They used to laugh at me, their children called me names. I would run and hide, feeling so ashamed.
Just for being born, I was just a boy, punished for a crime that was